Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm really glad you made it today because today I wanted to talk to you about a subject that is probably near and dear to a lot of us, and it's trying to figure out and navigate the claims process when you do not have sufficient evidence, or at least you don't believe that you have the sufficient evidence to get a adjudicated claim to be completed in your favor, meaning service connected, right? So with that, I wanted to dive in a little bit into this process, what it looks like, how you can work with different avenues that you do have in order to create an environment in which you can get your claim service connected without having the evidence needed. So a lot of times what I'll see is people will say, look, I know I have to show that this condition was caused during my time in service, but I have nothing in my service treatment records that indicates anything regarding this condition. And I've had it, I just didn't document it. So if I try to file a VA claim, how can I file that VA claim without any evidence? How can I file that VA claim without evidence to get VA benefits, specifically VA compensation? Well, there is a way. It's not impossible. Although it sounds impossible, it's definitely not the easiest way, right? So first, the quick version on what the easiest way is and how you should ideally be able to file a claim would ideally, and this is actually probably the lower percentage of claims are actually probably done this way, because we often do not go to any sort of medical professional and actually get diagnosed while in service. However, if you did, that would be the easiest way. The only thing that I usually see people get diagnosed for is injuries. So you'll have an injury, you go to the whatever it is, battalion aid station or whoever, and they write it down and it goes inside your stuff, right? Hurt your leg, hurt your back, hurt your this, hurt your that. The other things that you can take over-the-counter drug, maybe it's Motrin, aspirin, Benadryl, whatever, and drink some water and push forward, doesn't get documented, which is fine during your service, but then it bites you when you go to file your VA claim. And that's what this video is about, is trying to figure out how to navigate around that. So the successful claim has three components that I always talk about. One, time in service, that creates that window of opportunity, entry date, exit date. Two is that diagnosed condition that's chronic in nature or has residual effects. Now, that diagnosed condition can happen years after service, right? You don't have to get diagnosed while you're in service in order to have a successful claim with the VA. But you have to have a diagnosis. I don't care when it is. Ideally, right, it is during your time in service or within 1 year of your service. That would be the ideal situation. But oftentimes we don't do that. We just miss that window. So you have to go get that diagnosis. That's number two. Number three is a nexus, that link between that diagnosed condition of whenever you got that diagnosis, right? If you served over here and you got the diagnosis over here 15 years later, that's fine. You got a diagnosis 15 years later. Now you have to work with the nexus, showing that your diagnosed condition manifested or is a result of your time in service. Okay, so whatever that is. Now comes the fun part, right? Trying to figure out how to build that nexus. Okay, so you'll often hear the words Nexus Letter, and a Nexus Letter is simply a letter from a doctor trying to help you prove your nexus, which is the link between that condition and your time in service. Now, what I wanted to do here was read real quick from the VA's website directly, what evidence do I need to support my claim? So here it says, you can support your VA disability claim by providing these documents. VA medical records and hospital records. These could relate to your claimed illness or injuries, or they could show that your rated disability has gotten worse. Okay, private medical records and hospital reports. These could relate to your claimed illness or injuries, and they could show that your current, if you have a current condition, that it's gotten worse. Supporting statements. This is on the VA's website. Supporting statements. These could be from family members, friends, clergy members, law enforcement personnel, or people you served with. These statements could tell us more about your claimed condition and how and when it happened or how it got worse. Pretty interesting stuff. So now Depending on the type of claim you file, you may gather supporting documents yourself, or you can ask for help to gather evidence. So for government entities, the VA will try to do that for you as well. They have a duty to assist thing. I personally prefer to try to get everything myself because then I can comb through it and decide what I want to send in with my claim that supports my claim and leave out the stuff that has no relevance. So now it says here, do I have to submit evidence with my claim? And on the VA's website it says no. You don't have to submit any evidence to support your claim, but we may need to schedule a claim exam so we can learn more about your condition. You should also know that you have up to a year from the date we receive your claim to turn in any evidence. If you start your application and need time to gather more supporting documents, you can save your application and come back later to finish it. We'll recognize the date you started the application as your date of claim as long as you complete it within 365 days. What they're talking about there is an intent to file. So if you do it online and you start your claim online, that automatically triggers an intent to file, giving you 1 year to develop, is what I say, develop your claim, okay? So then it tells you the different ways that you can file your claim, but the big things here was the supporting statements that you can get from all kinds of different avenues, and the fact that the VA says no, you don't need to file any evidence for them to work your claim. However, a caveat to that is that you don't want to not send anything. Okay, you definitely want to write your own statements, and you want to get statements from other people that knew you during your time in service that could essentially attest to knowing about your condition, whatever it is, and be able to write about it a little bit, and getting that Nexus letter from a doctor helping to build that bridge for you. Now, hopefully you're still here with me. The next kind of piece that I'm going to talk about is a quick example of how this can happen as well. I knew a guy, still know him, a guy who he came down with oh God, what is it? Now I forgot the name. The lung cancer. Okay, so he came down with lung cancer, and basically due to asbestos, or asbestos would be the big cause of this cancer. Now, he obviously did not have this cancer while he was in service. He was in the Navy, and he served up in Alaska and somewhere else, and he was on a few ships and what have you. He's on no presumptive lists. So there's no presumption of service connection for that cancer for him. And what we did was we researched the ships that he was on. And we found one of the ships that he was on was riddled with asbestos. And that it was also worked on in a shipyard somewhere that was also just heavily enveloped by asbestos. It's like they used it everywhere. So we were able to leverage that ship that he was on during the time frames that he was on it, that acknowledged the massive amounts of asbestos used on that ship. And we were able to leverage that for his claim. He had zero evidence other than us researching on Google about his ship and that it had asbestos. So that's one of those things where, if you don't lean into it a little bit and do a little bit of research, you might be missing out on something big. He went from a 30% rating to 100% because of his active lung cancer. So really, really important stuff. Moving on here, the qualifications, right, for VA claims are pretty simple. And I just want to read through those so that way you understand. But in addition to the basic qualifications, there is the presumptives that we just talked about a little bit, right? That my buddy didn't qualify for any of those. Presumptives are another way that you can essentially get your claim approved without evidence that it really was from your time in service. Okay? Because really that's what we're talking about at the end of the day is, hey, look, I served. hey, I have a condition, I'm just having a hard time supplying evidence that my condition is as a result of my service or manifested during my service. That's where the hang-up is. Presumptives get rid of all that problem for you if you served in a specific location during a specific time frame, and you have a specified condition on the presumptive list. Now, for anything other than the presumptives, you need to really build that nexus bridge, is what I talk about, and leverage your MOS and the likelihood of having that type of a condition due to your MOS. If you are on any sort of ships, if you were at any sort of bases, research stuff that would have caused that condition. Comb through your medical records, because in some cases you may have mentioned it and don't remember mentioning it. It could be you checked a box on some sort of annual health assessment that says, I have painful swollen joints, or I have migraine headaches, or I have heartburn. And if you check the box, that means that you talked about it in service, which means it's pretty easy to come back and go, you know what? This actually started during my time in service. You could back it up with the Nexus letter. In some cases, what I see is at the local, VA level or the lower levels of the VA, it might get denied if you don't have a lot of, hard proof evidence. But the threshold is really 50-50. If the VA looks at all the evidence and goes, you know what, it's equal on both sides, the evidence is in equipoise, then they should rule in your favor. Now, they don't always get that right, which means you need to not get frustrated, but file an appeal. And also be prepared to push that appeal all the way to the Board of Appeals, because the judge will look at all that lay evidence, which is all your different statements from people that know you and that type of stuff. So as far as am I eligible for disability compensation, VA benefits, you're looking at you must have a current illness or injury known as a condition that affects your mind or body, and you served on active duty training, or inactive duty training. And then at least one of these must be true. You got sick or injured while serving in the military and can link this condition to your illness or injury, called an in-service disability claim. So that's what we were just talking about. This is the nexus, that you can link the condition to your and can link this condition to your illness or injury, called an in-service disability claim. So while serving in the military. Next is, you had an illness or injury before you joined. Oftentimes people will get a waiver for things. Maybe you were a wrestler in high school and you had an elbow issue, and but you could still do push-ups and stuff, but your elbow was a little bit funky, and you had some sort of a waiver. But then that injury got worse. So you had an illness or injury before you joined the military, and serving made it worse, called a pre-service disability claim. So those are a little more rare, but they do happen. What happens is the VA will actually basically prorate your rating. So if you were maybe, say, a 10% rating when you joined, but now it's a 30%, you might get a 20%, if that makes sense. Next one is, you have a disability related to your active duty service that didn't appear until after you ended your service, called a post-service disability claim. So that's important, right? Because like my buddy that I told you about, he didn't get lung cancer until 40 years after his service. 40 years after his service, or maybe even longer. Long time after his service, and we were able to research the ship he was on, let them know, hey, this thing had a ton of asbestos on it. He was on it for X number of days or months, and it was also worked on in the shipyard that also had a ton of asbestos. Here's the articles on those things and the proof, and he wasn't around asbestos to his knowledge anywhere else, and they approved it. So, and that's a condition that started way after his time in service. So very, very important stuff here. The next little piece is, I just wanted to kind of loop back to, is the power of those presumptives. Utilizing those. If you served in any sort of presumptive area, read the conditions and be familiar with them for in the event that you have any of those, you can claim them. And then I'm going to end it on this note. Even if you do not have anything in your service treatment records for your condition, and you believe and know that your condition started during your time in service, you should file a claim for that condition. At a minimum, you need to look at your MOS or your AFSC and see if there is any way that that job would have caused that condition, put you in a position to have that type of a condition. If so, cool. If not, cool. But if you do, then whatever articles you see or whatever methodology you come with from that, relay that to your primary care doctor or your specialist and have them write a Nexus letter. You can give them an example of what you're looking for. You could type one up yourself and say, this is kind of what I'm looking for, that addresses who I am, that I'm a patient, that I'm diagnosed with this condition, and that in your professional opinion, you believe, as the doctor, that my condition is as a result of my time in service or manifested during my time in service or first started during my time in service. And here's the rationale why service members are more likely to have X than others, and your job type was more likely to have resulted in this type of a condition. All of that type of stuff. At a minimum, you should be getting that Nexus letter from your doctor. If your doctor won't do it, find another doctor. Google search online, find somebody who will actually do a good Nexus letter for you. The next level is getting all those buddy statements, right? Whether it's family members, as it said in the VA's website, clergy members, people that knew you during your time in service that would attest to knowing, yeah, you know what, I remember he complained about migraines, or I seen that person with migraines, or she had GERD, or sleep apnea, or we shared a room and, oh my God, every night I thought the person was dying, so I'd throw a boot at them, right? That type of stuff, those letters go a long way. Also, pictures, if you hung on, my God, it's 17 minutes. Pictures are also evidence. So if you took pictures of different things while you were out and about, maybe it was, I had pictures of us with 81 millimeter mortars, right? With just, big, huge backpacks, all, crippled looking, walking, right? Trying to carry that stuff for 25 miles. And that's evidence, right? It shows that's the type of stuff that you did. And guess what? Now my back's jacked up. So a lot of good information, and basically I wanted to shine a little light on it to give a little bit of hope to those that feel like there's just no way. There is a way. You may have to push it to appeal, and even all the way to the board of appeals and have it seen by a law judge. But the more lay evidence that you could put in there, your own statements from friends, family members, people that you knew, served with, and doctor's Nexus letter, those types of things that all point back, MOS related field to those types of conditions, anything that you can find, any sort of studies you can find, anything you can get to put together is good. I always tell people, dig through that service treatment records and read everything and look at all the little annual health assessments, especially your last one, where you're checking boxes saying, have you now or have you ever experienced any of these? And it's got 50 conditions and you're saying yeses and nos. When you joined, it was all nos. Well, now you have some yeses because you gotten worn down a little bit. So with that, we'll go ahead and end it there. Thanks so much for watching this extremely long video. If you hung on to the end, I appreciate it. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.